Show. We have a special treat for you this week as Eric Edholm of Yahoo Sports is joining us. We're going to talk edge guys. This is a very robust and deep edge class. We're going to talk about the guys at the top, the guys in the middle, some sleepers at the back end, who's going to go early, and who might the Vikings target. Find out next on the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show. Tyler Forness, contributor at NBC Sports Edge and USA Today's Vikings Wire, along with being a member at Climbing the Pocket.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I am your host, Tyler Forness, and with me today, as I mentioned, is the lead draft writer for Yahoo Sports. His name is Eric Edholm. Eric, I have a little message for you. Thor said he would have accepted this booking today, except that he knew that he wouldn't accept it for the night of the national championship game, but he knew a Missouri grad would.
Yeah, that's a good one from Thor. He knew I wasn't gonna watch it other than maybe to tune in and kind of rage watch a few minutes of it. Look, it's a tough time to be a Missouri basketball fan, but then again, it's been a tough time to be a Missouri basketball fan since I have been a Missouri basketball fan. So this is nothing new. Just send a message back and let him know that when football season rolls along, the sport that we all love, he can watch our team play and learn how the sport works. And certainly he can turn on the TV and watch Kansas if he wants, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even the one really good year for Kansas, he spoiled their undefeated bid. So
yes,
I'd say you have one up on him.
That was a fun night. Football season. Yes.
Well, fantastic, Eric. I appreciate you joining me. And as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to talk edge guys because this edge class, as I said, is incredibly robust. And there are guys from top to bottom that are just, you could get day one starters middle of day two because there's just so much talent in this group. And let's kind of start at the top. We obviously have Aiden, Hutchinson, and Kayvon Thibodeau. When you watch these guys and look at them, how do you decipher your own rankings between the two? Because they each bring something a little different to the table, but their athletic profiles and their skill set on the field is tremendous.
Yeah, both really interesting players. And I think, for a long time, we were kind of talking about them as the possible 1-2 picks in the draft. And, obviously that's changed a little now. And I don't think that diminishes what Kayvon Thibodeau could be as a football player. I think people sort of feel like, because I wrote the story at the combine that, he could slide out of the top 5 and that, some teams weren't completely sold on him, at least as one of those sort of, Bosa brothers, Chase Young level prospects, that type of thing. Myles Garrett. I don't think he's there. He's a different cat, but he's a smart guy. He's got a lot of charisma. He's got a lot of confidence. His, flexibility is really impressive. His, strength when he engages it is really impressive. He's probably got a little bit more versatility to his game than Hutchinson, but not a vast difference there. I think with Hutchinson, everybody focuses on the short arms and I think maybe make a little too much of that. I don't know that I see a consistent 13, 14, 15 sack guy in the NFL. I've compared him a lot to, I don't even know if he's going to be as successful a rusher as Max Crosby is, somebody who's really turned into one of the, top sack artists. But, the name Chris Long's come up a lot. I like that a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense. Here's a, high floor, high character player who will give you a lot of good reps. He'll be on the field all the time. He could stop the run. Although that part of his game is still, not perfect, and it's good. And certainly can penetrate the pocket, come inside on twists and stunts and things like that. They're both really good football players. This is a year where, they're being talked about in the top 5, 6, 7, 8 picks, whatever it may be for Thibodeau. In a normal year, I suspect they'd be more like the 8th to 12th overall picks or, something in that range. But because of the lack of high-end talent, they've probably been pushed up a little bit. Again, it's, they're the head of the class for a reason. I think, both are going to end up being pretty successful pros.
I agree completely. And I want to dive in a little bit to the reports that you kind of alluded to earlier about Kayvon Thibodeau. A lot of reports, starting with Todd McShay at the Senior Bowl, talking about how Thibodeau didn't give enough effort at Oregon, and he doesn't necessarily love football. And we've heard a lot of these reports over the course of time, and those reports will probably continue to be heard throughout. But one question I have for you, having talked to the man himself and have been covering the sport for a long time, do you believe that some of this stuff with Thibodeau has to potentially do with NIL becoming a thing? Because this, really talking about brand awareness and business potential has never been as big of a deal for college athletes as it is today because of the ability to make money off of your name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really is sort of a sign of the times type of question where you have to ask yourself, how much does this really matter to NFL people? And through what prism should they be looking at this? And, if you go back and read my story that I wrote at the Combine, when I talked to a few people who, one decision maker and one assistant general manager in Indy, and one other person for that matter. I don't know if I quoted him in the story, but I used him for background anyway. It definitely came up, the idea of the branding, the self as a brand type of thing. And look, if you have a tremendous football player, who cares, right? I mean, that's the bottom line is you just want to know what you're dealing with. If you have a superstar and they want to build their brand, what's stopping them? I don't think there are too many superstars out there who, aren't sort of self-promoting or having other people do it for them, or, making them into household names for stuff beyond their play. If it doesn't interfere with the product on the field, who really cares? And I haven't heard anybody specifically use those words that you mentioned in the McShay report about doesn't love football. I've suspected that some people wonder whether whether football, meaning the stuff you do in January, the stuff you do in May, the stuff you do the month before training camp, what have you, does he love that part of the grind? I don't know the answer to that. I think they're trying to find that out. That's what the interview process is for. That's what, checking with your trusted school sources, the strength coach, the position coach, all these different people, who hopefully you can get close to the answer or have an idea who the person is. And so, yeah, I do think that's sort of become a little bit more of a hot topic in the NIL era. But I think NFL people are just now starting to try to figure out, how do we interpret that? And how does it affect our draft decisions? And are we using that information the right way? That's, I think, the bottom line right there.
I think you said it really well, and it's going to be really interesting to see if that ends up impacting his draft stock. As of right now, we believe Aiden Hutchinson's going first overall. Everything is trending towards an edge player to be at the top, especially with the tag of Cam Robinson. And you have three guys that have been quote unquote projected to go at number one from this edge group. You have Thibodeaux, Hutchinson, who's the leader in the house. Then you have Georgia's Travon Walker. Where do you believe that the Jaguars are going to go? Are they going to stick with Hutchinson here?
Yeah, I mean, and it's, it's really interesting if you just look at if you try to interpret what the Jaguars are going to do based on their offseason moves, right? You're fair to point out that they tagged Cam Robinson. They saw some good stuff, I think, out of Walker Little down the stretch to where those theoretically could be your starting offensive tackles. And all the talk was about Evan Neal, Ekwonu, one of those guys first. When I talked to Doug Peterson at the Combine, I mean, I said, look, you were on that 2013 Chiefs team as the OC. You guys drafted Eric Fisher first in a unusual draft. That was a strange year. There was no clear-cut number one. I think Luke Jokel went 2, et cetera. I mean, you had to be picky, similar to this year in some respects. And I said, what does it take to take a tackle number one? He said, boy, they got to be pretty special. They have to be a day one starter, B, have been battle tested. They have to, the athleticism has to be top or close to the top, you know, and he had a long list of things that he felt like that person needed. So that made me think that edge was realistic. But, you know, they brought in Ekwonu for a visit just the other day. They had Walker in. They've been doing work on him. So, yeah, I think Hutchinson's probably the odds-on favorite. You know, Vegas has him installed as the favorite by a pretty clear margin, you know, minus 200, minus 350, whatever it is. But I don't know that it's set in stone. I mean, I would say maybe it's an 85% chance. And then the Lions really have an interesting call it too. And they've done work on Walker. Do they go back to the offensive line, et cetera, et cetera? And it's gonna be a, you know, if this mystery keeps lingering, I think it's going to be a kind of a fascinating couple of weeks here as we get closer. But, you know, the Jaguars used the first round pick on, I know it was a previous staff, but, you know, Kayvon Thibodeau, they have Josh Allen. They just signed Arden Key, you know, so I don't know. I mean, the question is, which position do they feel like they need more help at, you know, and which player has the most upside, and that'll help determine. But Hutchinson does check a lot of boxes for what I think they want.
I agree completely. Last question on Thibodeaux, and then we're going to move on to kind of that next tier. We had Ryan in the comments saying, if Thibodeaux is the next Clowney, then I'll pass. And we've heard this comp before, Kayvon Thibodeau to Jadeveon Clowney, including from the man himself. And there are a lot of parallels to Clowney. And there are some negatives to Clowney as well, especially when you talk about the consistency element. With that information, do you believe NFL teams might try to stay away from him because of the lack of overall like consistent success Clowney has had, or will that potentially be a benefit because he's been a consistent disruptor?
Yeah, he has. I mean, when you watch Jadeveon Clowney at his best, I mean, he's a really good football player, right? I thought there were times last year even that, you know, you said to yourself, boy, he can impact games. There are certain times where you say, you know, he was the best player on the field, or at least for part of that game, or he made the play that changed the game, that sort of thing. That's the kind of playmaking ability I believe Thibodeaux has. But, you know, he had that weird sort of dispute with the Texans early in his career. You know, he's played on 3 different teams in 3 years. He's been a player that people use as sort of a hired gun. And when you keep him motivated, you know, like you play well, you get another contract. He's generally speaking, he's done pretty well for himself. So that's my worry, is that, you know, if Thibodeaux hits a rough patch during his second or third year, and, you know, the same thing could happen to Micah Parsons or anybody else, right? Young players can break out early, look great as a rookie, and then people kind of catch up to them, or adversity hits, or they don't work quite as hard, or whatever it may be. How will he react? You know, what's his response to that? And, you know, Clowney's been able to sort of carve out a, you know, interesting career. I don't know I'd say overall been good, you know, but has he been special, consistently special? I don't think so. So, yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit the worry. And when you hear the guy himself compare, you know, he says, I'm Jadeveon Clowney 2.0. I think a lot of people went, ugh, you're not shooting higher, you know, like, you know, you're not going to the very top here. But, you know, I understood. I appreciated the fact that he has watched enough of his game and watched enough of Clowney's game to know that, you know, athletically speaking, there's a lot of similarities.
There really is a lot of similarities, and I'm very intrigued to see where he ends up here at the next level, because there's a lot of fascinating places that he could go. This next tier of edge guys is very interesting. You've got your Travon Walkers, Jermaine Johnson, George Karlaftis. And then at the very end of that tier, you could talk about Boye Mafe and Arnold Ebiketie. When you look at this tier, they could go anywhere from potentially 1 or 2 overall in the case of Walker, and top 5 with Johnson. And then they could fall all the way down to the teens and the 20s. When you look at this second group, and especially with the case of Walker, who's an absolute alien moving in the middle of the field, but he has no pass rush savvy whatsoever at this point. And how do you parse that out, and how do you kind of group these guys together?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and just for you know, historically speaking, I should probably try to look up, you know, like when was the last true edge who went that high in the draft, who was really that big a project from a pass rushing standpoint. And again, it's not like he doesn't have the physical ability. I think everybody anyone who turned on the TV during the combine knows, like, this is a special athlete, but you know, it's still raw in terms of his technique, in terms of, you know, how he tries to set up blockers, stringing moves together, things like that, you know, keeping his eye on the ball. I mean, there's a lot of different, you know, aspects to it, you know, reading run versus pass based on the, you know, how the tackle sets and things like that. I mean, there's so many different ways to get better at this stuff. And if you have a good D-line coach or a veteran in the room and what the right scheme, obviously that stuff can flourish. But, you know, there are teams that have done studies that show that, you know, if you're a consistent sack producer in college, you tend to be, you know, you have more chance of being so in the NFL, whereas the other way around is a little bit more of a reach. So that's fascinating to me. But again, I understand why he's being considered at that point. Johnson, I mean, I still feel like on some level he's a little bit underrated. You know, I get that he had to get out of Georgia and a little bit older, you know, but, you know, we watched him down in Mobile and he was, you know, for 2 days he owned practice and then he said, all right, I'm good. I think I've done what I came here to do. And just a relentless guy. And I think pretty good against the run as well. And, you know, there's times a little bit of a bull in a china shop, but still I'll take that. I mean, I'll take a disruptor who, you know, needs to sort of clean up a thing here or two, but he's competitive. He's confident. He's got the athletic traits you want to see at the position. Length is good. I mean, I like him a lot as a football player. And I think he's more ready-made from a pass rush standpoint. And may have more sacks than Hutchinson in year one, you know, depending on where he falls and where he ends up. So Karlaftis obviously is, you know, he's really interesting too. And that, you know, new to the position, you see that with a couple guys, you know, I mean, David Ojabo, who would have been in the same discussion pre-injury, you know, same idea of being raw, still developing as a football player. But Karlaftis, relatively new to the sport, phenomenal athlete, Greek freak nickname fits. I mean, it's not a stretch to say that. He does a lot of freaky things out there. You know, there were some games I was a little bit underwhelmed by what I saw, but some where you say, okay, yeah, I can absolutely see, you know, this guy working as part of a, you know, 3-man rotation at end and being, you know, a consistently good energy guy, pass rush juice guy, pursuit, the whole thing. I think he ends up more second half of round one. I would be a little bit surprised if he went higher than, you know, the midpoint of the first round, unless there's a surprising run or something at that, or just, you know, the right team has him there. You know, Mafe too. I mean, it's, you know, he's a comer. I mean, he's on the move. Like, you can see the progression with him, and it's exciting if you watch some of his early tape, and I know you're up in that area or whatever, but, you know, he didn't really seem to know what he was doing, but he always gave you a great effort and gave you something out there. And I thought every day at the Senior Bowl, he just seemed to get a little incrementally better. And in the game, he finished strong as well. I think he had 2 sacks. So personally, do I see a first round edge in Boye Mafe? Not really. But I don't see, I mean, yeah, I kind of get it. Like, I feel like his ascension has been a little bit surprising to me, even though I was on him early and I liked him and everything. To me, he would be like the perfect mid-second round pick, but I absolutely understand why people are big fans of his. And Ebiketie, I would say, is in that same sort of category of, you know, early in the year, scouts were I had a guy compare him to Josh Uche, and, you know, I mean, it was the guy, the free agent from the Chargers this year, Uchenna Nwosu. I mean, that type of a player where, you know, it's far from a finished product, but they do a lot of good things. And you know, they're a little bit atypical size-wise. But, you know, you could probably ask him to stand up and move around a little bit and be fine with that. I think he blocked 2 kicks this year. He does a lot of good things. I think Ebiketie will be probably a better pro than a college player, even with his breakout year this year.
Yeah, a lot of really good points there. And I kind of want to touch on Karlaftis really quick, because as I was doing some of my research, I don't remember who gave him this comp, but I absolutely loved it. Karlaftis comp to former Purdue Boilermaker Ryan Kerrigan. And I can really see his career kind of playing out that way. If a team were to draft him and really use him like Ryan Kerrigan, inside and out, stand up, is that the best path for success for Karlaftis?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you may want to figure out what the right weight is for him, if he's going to be playing a little bit inside and on passing downs or things like that. In the 260s, is he going to hold up in there? I don't know, maybe. He's not the longest guy in the world, but he's got some length, but he's a thicker built dude. I mean, he's sort of built squarely in a little bit. So I can see it working, but I might want to beef him up a little bit if I do that. But yeah, I agree. The power in his bull rush, obviously, you could beat guards with quickness and things like that. I mean, I really like the fact that he plays a big man game, but also has some quickness as well. So yeah, I mean, I worry about the lack of length a little bit. That's something that maybe is a little bit overblown, but his effort is tremendous. The versatility is really attractive. The sense that I've gotten is, his range is probably more 20 to 32, but that may have changed. That was, maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago that I had heard that. So I think he's going to be a high snap, high energy guy who can line up in multiple spots and even be maybe a 3-4 end. Again, that's where the length question comes in, but it wouldn't stun me if somebody asked him to try to do that.
When you talk about these 5 players that we just discussed, all of them have such a varying range of where they could be selected. Based on kind of your best guess, which one do you think will end up being the best value selection? Where they get picked is going to be more in line with their talent, because Walker at this point could go top 3. And then Jermaine Johnson's got a range of like 5 to 15. And then Karlaftis, Mafe, and Ebiketie are kind of all over the board. Which player is going to be selected with the best value?
That's a great question. I like the way you framed that, because at that number, let's say Walker goes 2nd, or even 5th for that matter. I have a hard time thinking that he's going to end up being this tremendous value at 5, right? To where we're saying, oh, he should have gone 1st or 2nd. I mean, maybe, right? Again, those tremendous athletic skills, the character seems to be there, the work ethic. So, he may have been overshadowed a little bit in that defense. He wasn't asked to sort of be this massive playmaker in that scheme either. So, I see the path for success for him, but kind of rule him out for that reason, and probably Johnson as well, especially if he ends up in the top 10. So I think I would probably say Ebiketie. I mean, I think I guess that's the one where you say to yourself, would it be stunning if he lasted until the Colts pick at 42 or something? No. Could you also see him sneaking into round 1? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. But, because of the depth of this class and so many different types of bodies and games that, people can be a little pickier and choosier on that stuff. But, he's got the hand strength and technique. He can win in a lot of different ways. I think he's a pretty versatile player, even if you're really only playing him in one spot. I mean, I think he can string run plays out laterally. He can, he's got eyes for the passing game. I think he's, we've seen him impact the kicking game with the 2 blocks. I just think his pass rush arsenal is pretty impressive. I mean, I'm not a pass rush specialist by any means, but you can see him. He throws the kitchen sink at people. And so I think he's one of those players that if you don't ask him to play 800 snaps in a season, where he's more of a 35, 40, 45 a snap a game guy, a little bit below that level, he could be really good. And I think it's crazy to think, because especially given his unusual path, right? I mean, learning the sport later, going to Temple, unheralded really until last year in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would like him to if he gets in the perfect spot, he easily could be that value guy.
I agree completely. And then we'll move on to some mid-day 2 picks and day 3 sleepers here in just a second. But when you talk about this group, when it pertains to the Minnesota Vikings, they have a needed edge. Is it their most dire need anymore with the Za'Darius Smith signing? No, but they don't have any concrete plan after this season at the position of edge. When you talk about pick 12, is there a player that makes the most sense for what Ed Donatell is likely to do, and that's run a Vic Fangio style defense?
Yeah, that's the interesting part. I mean, especially if they truly plan to go to that, that odd front and everything like that. I mean, I would probably say that, I mean, obviously, assuming Thibodeau isn't there, because he could stand up and rush and do all those different things. Yeah, I mean, Johnson would be nice, but I think his responsibilities would be a little bit more limited. I mean, that's a really tough call there. I don't know. I mean, I want to know a little bit more about what they're planning to do, but at 12, it feels like the options are a little bit limited, because I don't know that Thibodeau or Johnson will be there. I can't believe Walker would be there. Karlaftis feels a little bit early to me. Ojabo's now out of the top, 15, 20 mix with the injury. I don't know that there's a player that I would love taking there. And the question you would have is, okay, what can Jermaine Johnson do on his feet? Can he be I'm trying to think of a good example of, I don't know. I mean, I guess like dimensions wise, I'm trying to think of somebody who they've, that style of defense has had. And I'm just not coming up with a lot of names right now. So it's a tough one for me.
I think what really makes it even tougher is just kind of how Danielle Hunter and Za'Darius Smith are likely to be deployed. Because when you watch the Green Bay Packers defense for the past couple of years, Za'Darius was playing all over the place. He had a game in 2019 against the Vikings where he ruined the season and cost the Vikings a shot at the division title by just wrecking things from the A gap and B gap. Being a monster inside. Yeah. So the diverse skill sets of both of those players really make that even more intriguing, because you want to draft probably more of a diverse guy instead of a specialist, which it feels like you're going to want to put him in a 3 or 4 point stance relatively consistently.
Yeah, I agree. That's where I hesitate a little bit. Could he drop a little in space? Sure. Is that what he does best? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about kind of this next tier, you're talking more day 2 guys. But really the biggest wild card is David Ojabo, who had a legit chance to be a top 10 pick before popping his Achilles at the Michigan Pro Day just 2 weeks ago. When you look at Ojabo and how explosive he is and how much he relies on just having a elite first step and quickness, the Achilles injury can really destroy all of that. When you look at him and how he projects out to the next level, how are you parsing that out with his draft stock? You mentioned he's probably not going to be in contention for the top 15 to 20, which makes sense. Is he somebody that could be taken by the Packers or Chiefs in the back end of this first round because they have multiple picks and they can afford to take that shot? Or does he just fall to the second round because it's an Achilles and you generate so much power from your legs?
Yeah, you make a great point. That Achilles injury, especially the bigger the guy or the more explosive movements that you're having to make, that's a worry. And it's not like he was going to come in. Let's say the injury doesn't happen, right? He went through his pro day, everything went fine, and we're still talking about him as a top 15 or 20 pick. You're still drafting him as a project, as sort of a Rashawn Gary type, right? If you want to, obviously same school and same range of the draft. You mentioned the Packers earlier. Gary was laughed at by a lot of people, including Packers fans, when that pick was made. But I think what they were able to do was project a little bit and say, his role is going to be a little different than it was in Don Brown's defense. We're going to have to get him a little stronger here, a little better against the run, a little more consistent, teach him the finer points. But boy, last year you saw, a very improved product, and they feel pretty good about that one now. So he was that kind of player before the injury, and I didn't think he was great against the run. And I felt like it was all gas, no brakes as a rusher. And, it just felt like, he's still kind of processing things a little bit. I have no doubt that he's got the capacity to do it, but I do think that injury, just because Cam Akers came back, way faster than anybody expected, doesn't mean that every future Achilles injury is treated the same. So I'm worried, man. I don't know.
He also wasn't that effective either. So that's the difficult part. He wasn't good in the playoffs. He averaged less than 3 yards a carry. And the Super Bowl, he averaged, I think, 1.9. You're not talking about a guy who came back and he was true to form. You're talking about a guy who's probably still a year away from actually being effective.
Yep. And Achilles, boy, you you come back too soon and you're not, I mean, then you rupture it again. I mean, then it's real trouble. So yeah, that worried me when he came back early for two reasons. One, his own health. Two, the idea that the timetable is somehow magically changed on Achilles injuries. That's going to be an off-season story for me. I mean, I really want to dive into that more when I have more time, is to say, is this a fluky case, or is this sort of the new norm? Did we learn something from his rehab, or did we, like you pointed out, we didn't see the same player. They had to use him. I mean, or they felt they had to use him. But still, I agree. I worry about Ojabo a little bit, and I hope he doesn't. I mean, the mental parts can be tough for him. The rehab followed by a lot of sitting and watching, and then mostly year two expectations will come in pretty big, I think.
No, absolutely. And that's kind of my difficulty with him too. A team that already has an established pass rush where there's not going to be that pressure. And that's why I identified the Packers and the Chiefs. You have two swings in the first round. You can likely afford, even with that narrow window the Packers have, to take a shot. And that's why Jameson Williams has also been in discussion too, because you don't need him to be effective day one. Day 30 is just fine, because if he's that good, it doesn't matter. As we kind of move on, because we've got just a little bit of time before we jump into the mock draft, sleeper guys. There's a couple guys that I really like in the mid to late rounds. One of them we saw in Mobile, Deangelo Malone. He's a little slender, but I absolutely love his burst and bend around the edge. Alex Wright from UAB is another guy that I've really enjoyed watching. And Tyreek Smith was really fun to watch in Mobile. And there's some other guys. This edge class arguably goes 20-25 deep. And you're talking about Jeffrey Gunter from Coastal Carolina potentially being a 7th round pick as like
right?
edge 20 to 25. Yeah, and that to me is just insane, because he's a very good player. Who are some of your favorites in the back end of this group that you think can make a real contribution early?
Yeah, early. Okay. Who could do it, and it wouldn't shock me. Sam Williams. I mean, he's got a lot to learn, and there's some character stuff, and I mean, he's not. There's a reason why he didn't get a Senior Bowl invite right away, and there's a reason why he's not being talked about as a first or early second round pick. And his pass rush technique, I don't think is anything special. It's a little crude in some ways. It's like, let me maul the tackle, run right through him if I can. And sometimes it works, but his effort is so there. And I heard some of the quotes from the combine, just sort of him feeling like he was a little bit disrespected and things like that. And, I could see him being an energy guy and really, landing in the right system and doing pretty well for himself. He's fascinating. I guess I'll say it that way. I can't quit him. That's another way to put it, I guess. Josh Pascal, I think, is an underrated player in some ways. Another guy with some special teams value and a little bit of versatility, I think can, line up in a number of techniques. He's got some length to him too. Kentucky's had a sneaky good sort of NFL minor league feeder system, if you will. I mean, they've had some players develop in the last few years. They're well coached. I feel like he might be one who, again, sort of a better pro than college player. Going down a little bit, I would say, Michael Clemens from A&M. I feel like he gets a little bit of a bad rap. I like him in the middle rounds. I think he could end up being again, another guy with some character stuff that has to be sorted out. But I think he's a better football player than he gets credit for being. You mentioned Alex Wright. That's a really good pick. Another guy who, in a normal year of edge depth, we might be talking as a, sort of, borderline top 50 or 60 guy, but he's maybe a little bit lower than that just because of the fact there's so many good ones. I don't know what to do with Sanders in Cincinnati just because of the weight questions, but he's a really good football player. And you mentioned Gunter too, boy. Talk about a kind of a junkyard dog and a guy who could bring it. I really like him. So he'll make an excellent 6th round pick for like a bad football team and end up starting by week 9. I think that's going to end up being the hallmark of this class, is the depth throughout.
No, the depth throughout this class is just crazy. There are 2 more guys I want to touch on, and then we're going to get to that mock draft. USC's Drake Jackson, who's mentioned in the comments, and then Virginia Tech's Amari Barno. Drake Jackson was projected to potentially be a top 10 pick during the summer.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of looking like he's a solid day 2, maybe even early day 3 guy. And Barno, I can't figure out how to project him because he tested in the 4.3s for speed, but there were so many inconsistencies for me on tape. What do you see in these guys, and where do you think their value lies?
Yeah, I think Drake Jackson is another guy who's kind of been forgotten about a little bit, especially like you said, with all the kind of the top 20 hype that he got at one point. I think he was a little bit miscast at USC. I mean, like the role he was playing was probably not, I'd like to see him moving forward a little bit more but he's loose, limber guy. He's athletic as heck. I just think that he's going to have a hard time earning a first and second down role and right away. I would say his lack of power in his game surprised me a little bit. Just sort of felt like just the lower body strength may not be fully developed yet. So he's one that probably needs to spend a year in a conditioning program before before that talent can maybe, kind of develop, marinate, if you will. And you're right about Barno. I talked to somebody at Virginia Tech early in the year that I said, tell me about this guy. And he is so fascinating in so many ways, but yeah, I think he's scheme specific. And he's not a complete player, but you see some kind of freaky little things that he does out there, and you want to maybe like him a little bit more than what his tape suggests you should, And so I'm trying to look at my notes here while I talk, but yeah, I don't know. He's the one that I think probably ends up day 3, if I had to guess, even with the numbers that he put up. I feel like there's enough questions and holes about his game that especially in this class that may cause him to slip through the cracks a little bit.
Yeah, this edge class and how it ends up playing out is going to be really fascinating, and I'm really excited to see what it does because it's really going to be a pick your flavor at the top, and then as it trickles down throughout, because there's just so many different types of players, and we talked about it with Hutchinson, Thibodeaux, Johnson, Walker, Karlaftis. This may be the best singular group we've seen come out in at least the last decade of one single position, because there's just so many talented players.
Yeah, from a depth perspective, absolutely. Again, I don't see Hutchinson as a Nick Bosa. I really don't. I don't think he'll ever be that destructive game-changing player. But I'd be shocked if he wasn't something, right? I feel pretty good about Kayvon Thibodeau having some strong moments in the league. Walker, there's so much upside. It's hard not to like him. So for a top 3, that's a pretty good start. And then, really, I would say from the mid first until about the mid 4th round is unusual to see that much depth.
So last question, and then Dave will have you get the mock draft set up here quickly. If you were picking for the Vikings, where is going to be your best value spot to try and maximize? Because one thing we know about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, he is a market manipulator, and he is an expert on maximizing value. Where do you think he's going to end up maximizing the value of this edge class?
Yeah, I think it's going to be somewhere on day 2. If I had to guess, and I know they've got, I think they have their original picks, if I'm not mistaken, and then there's a little bit of a gap. So, yeah, I think it's probably going to end up being, I mean, my gut says probably the second round pick is going to still give them a player that I think they'd feel pretty good about, but it wouldn't stun me if it was the 3rd rounder, or if they felt like they, could move back from their 2nd round pick or move up from their 3rd round pick. So somewhere between, I don't know whether they're at 45 or something and 75 or wherever, somewhere between those 2 picks, I think is where the likelihood is that, you want to get, a Logan Hall and make him a 5-tech. Sure, you can do that. If you want to get a Dominique Robinson in round 3 because you think he's got upside, great, you could do that. Nick Bonito is more of your 3-4 OLB type, whatever. That he should be available in that range as well. So I think the options will be more plentiful, and somebody will fall, some unexpected, or 1 or 2 for that matter at that position, because of what we've talked about.
Absolutely. Dave, let's get the mock draft machine rolling. And as we do that, I'm going to talk quickly about our sponsor, Lake Monster Brewing. We will be live on Friday, April 29th, not February. February just happened. Going live at 5:30 Central Time for the NFL Draft, talking Vikings, talking how the first round shaped up. And we are going to be live all night. Make sure you come join us and get a delicious Lake Monster brew from the brewery, or you can stop by my liquor store. You can hit me up and I will tell you exactly where that is. Eric, this is how it's going to work. We're going to talk about each pick, and we're going to make the pick with the Draft Network mock draft simulator. And I'm going to let you kind of take control, because they have heard all my opinions on all these guys and how the board's fallen. We've taken receiver at 12. We've taken edge player. We've taken corner. We've taken Malik Willis. We've done just about everything. So the goal of this show is to educate these great Vikings fans about the different possibilities, because with a new GM, you really don't know any of the thresholds. You don't know what the priorities are going to be. We don't really know much at all. We can project, but we don't know. So, yep. Dave, let's get it rocking and rolling. We are going to start the draft here. Mateo, no, I do not ship out of state. Unless you have a distributor's license, it is illegal to mail beer. So I am not a.
Welcome to Climbing the Pocket's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick, and who's your favorite choice?
That intro gets me excited every time. And the best part is my guy Bailey Zappi finishing it off. Oh, I love me some Bailey Zappi. All right, Dave, fire it up. Let's get it started.
Set it up. Okay.
Easy. Dave's going to hit start. We're going to do just the first three picks, and no pressure. This is all fun and exploring different scenarios.
Gotcha. All right, so
we have three trade offers.
Always take the trade. All right.
First one.
You're going to have to help me with that. Yeah, it's
hard to see, I know. Cardinals want us to move down to 23. Get their third, sixth, and both sixth for our first at 12. Then we have Chargers move down to 17 plus their fourth and a sixth for our 12.
Oh.
And
so you move 2 spots down, you get a fourth and a whatever?
Yep. And then the Saints.
Or no, 5 spots down. Sorry.
5 spots.
Saints, their 16th, a fourth, and that's it. Which I don't believe they
did update.
Yeah. Because of the trade today.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad they updated that. Okay. But we can't see who the first 11 picks are, right? Without
declining. Yeah.
Without declining. So this is like a mystery pick. I don't know. Pull that second trade up again. I'm kind of tempted here. What do you think here? We're getting a 4 and because we don't have a 4 right now, I believe, right? We're missing a 4th rounder. I know we're not making a 4th round pick, but I'm going to include it in my value. And then a 6. I'll tell you what. Without knowing who the guys on the board are, which does make it tough, that one would tempt me the most. But should we just go traditional choice here? What do you think?
I'm okay with taking the offer, and what's really intriguing is getting the 6th round pick would give the Vikings 4 6th, which would give them ammo to move up in rounds 4, rounds 5, and even in round 3, even just to go up a couple spots. So it gives us ammunition. I think we take the trade and let the Chargers come up for either Jordan Davis or a wide receiver.
Yeah, and look, if they can't move those picks, you just dominate the airwaves on Saturday. I mean, like, you own the 6th round. There's something to be said for that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No more trades. We're gonna make a pick. Let's get rid of the trade
there
offers. I think we're standing pat. Now let's see. Okay.
All right. So here's what's interesting. We could have taken Jermaine Johnson. He went off the board. Penning, Booth, London, and Williams are all off the board. So your top players are Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Pickett, Zion Johnson, Trent McDuffie, Tyler Linderbaum, George Karlaftis, Kenyon Green, Devin Lloyd, Jahan Dotson, and my wide receiver 1, Chris Olave.
And receiver, I still think is a position they'll look at. I mean, I understand you got one of the best young ones in the game, but you got to think about life after Adam Thielen too. And I don't know, it's a possibility, but I don't know that that's my first instinct.
Let me ask you this real quick, Eric. I'm under the impression that with the Adams and Hill extensions, we're going to see wide receiver rookie contracts become much closer in value to NFL teams that quarterbacks on rookie contracts will be. So I think it's even more in play now than it was 2 months ago. And Kevin O'Connell loves 3 wide receiver sets. We don't have depth enough to do 3 wide receiver sets.
Right. You've got KJ and what else, right? We don't really know if who do we even have here?
Amir Smith-Marset and BC Johnson.
BC, right? Yeah, okay. I tell you what. It just feels like it makes a lot of sense to. The question is though, the Browns, wasn't clear how they valued the wide receiver pick in wide receiver position in the draft previously, but the point you make is a good one, which is with all the contracts going up as far as they are, to be able to get 5 years at a discount rate. I really do think it makes. Plus, again, I like KJ Osborne. I really did. I watched him coming out, and I felt like this is, a very draftable player, good football player. Wouldn't it make sense to add another guy? I'm really tempted because you don't need the nose tackle, right? I mean, you got Tomlinson and who else? I mean,
Harrison Phillips.
I know this is taken, and Harrison Phillips too, right? Yeah. I mean, of those guys, I have the ones that just league-wide value. I would say, Davis sticks out, and Olave isn't lasting too much longer. Should we do it? Should we take a wide out?
Do it. I've been very vocal about the fact that I think Chris Olave is the best wide receiver in this draft. I think it's being overlooked because of prospect fatigue and some of the same reasons Justin Jefferson ended up being overlooked. Just incredibly technical, explosive in and out of breaks, great at the catch point. He's not Garrett Wilson great at the catch point, but he knows how to get up and high point the football. And
he's just not going to power through people, pounds. Right?
Yeah. I love Olave, and if he goes to the Packers, I'm going to cry because that's my worst case scenario.
And part of what I mean, like, yes, he opened things up for other people, but their talented receivers open things up for him. If you go to a place like Minnesota, he's going to see single coverage. He's going to impact the way. Chris Olave, we're doing it. I like it. I wouldn't have come up with that one originally, but I like the pick.
All right, Chris Olave, wide receiver 1 to the Minnesota Vikings, giving Kirk Cousins one less excuse for not making a successful run here in the 2022 season. Dave, what is the pick? It's hard to read.
That should make it a little bit better. The Jets are offering their second round 38, and they want to receive our second round 46 and 6th rounder.
Done. Let's do it. Let's move up.
Yep, there we go.
6th
rounder? Do you
rounder?
think this is requisite? Yep. Do you think that's requisite value to actually happen on draft day?
No. That's why I ran the placard up to the virtual, whatever. Ojabo just went off the board. I was going to say, if he's still there, I would at least have thrown his name out there. So, okay.
What do you think, looking at this group, Perry and Winfrey as a 5 tech and then move inside to 3 tech on pass rush downs? Does he have that kind of versatility?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I could sort of get behind that. What are the other positions that you think are most pressing? Just so I keep them in my head here. I mean, cornerback.
Yeah. Corner is definitely one. This fan base is very divided. I am anti-Stingley at 12. A lot of the fan base is anti-Trent McDuffie at 12, especially because of the arm length concerns. A lot of people that listen, I've been seeing a lot in the comments. Tariq Woolen, and you and I talked about Woolen a decent amount in Mobile. I think he's fascinating because half his reps are like, wow, this guy could be Darrelle Revis. Half his reps are like, man, maybe he should go back to wide receiver. Like trying to project his potential has been very difficult. But that's a dart throw you'd like to take.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, I also see Kyler Gordon there, and I mean that's a pretty good player right there. I think in time, and Woolen obviously with his length could totally understand that. I think both could play man coverage. Wow, this is really interesting too. I'll say this: I know DeMarvin Leal gets a lot of garbage on Twitter, and he didn't play as well as he did, but he might be off the board by this point. I've heard some surprising information lately on him still going relatively high despite not working out well, but whatever. I'm not the one making the picks. So
where would you play him? 3 technique, or would you play him in a 5 in the 3-4?
5, maybe a 5. I mean, 3 is probably his most natural spot, I would say, but he's sort of a jack of all trades. He could probably he might be a versatile fit. I think he's a reach here, though. I still wouldn't take him at 30. Where are we? 38 here.
Yep.
Oh boy, the clock's running out on me here. I kind of like your Winfrey idea. I think that makes some sense. It's not perfect, but it works. I think it works.
There we go. Perry and Winfrey, the absolute game wrecker that we saw in Mobile, Alabama, where they were double teaming him in simple drills, which was one of the oddest things I had seen.
Yeah. He almost got – who did he almost get killed? Was it Ritter in the first day or something like that? I mean, like,
no,
he was one of the quarterbacks.
Penning through
that's what it was.
I think it was Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, no, Isaiah Thomas. Okay, maybe it was – that's what it was.
I've got a perfect shot of it.
Oh, you do?
Floating around on Twitter. Yeah. All right, so we could give up 77 and a 6 to go up to 64. That's a little bit of a crazy value right there. I usually say no to these because I don't think it's realistic.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
The other one,
David.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I agree. Let's pass on the offer and attempt to mimic real life here a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 68 and 108 for 77 and what?
Oh, okay.
123 and 191.
So it's a 3 for 2 and you move up. So, yeah, I agree.
And then you move up 15 in the 4th round. That's so far from realism.
Yeah, I agree.
We go down 7 spots. We get a late 7th. That's probably a no.
Yeah.
Get a 6 to go down 8 spots.
Yeah. Nah.
That's a no, too.
As hot as those 6-rounders are,
Mm-hmm. All right. Quarterback is at the top of the list with both Howell and Carson Strong. Darian Kennard, Darian Beavers, Chanel. What do you think of Chanel? Like, one, where would you play him? I've seen some people on Twitter talk about him as a top 20 player in this class. I don't think his coverage skills are anywhere near close to being any close to that evaluation. Where do you believe Chanel is valued, and where do you have him?
I would say I have him late 2nd round, early 3rd, if I had to guess. I mean, he's a great run stopper, and he's like Jawan Bentley or something like that. Like big, kind of. I mean, obviously he's got athletic skills. I just, like you said, I don't think he's all that fluid in coverage. But for the right team, this wouldn't be too early. I mean, I would say this is about where he'll go off the board. I just think it's going to be scheme specific for him, and you really can't ask him to do too much coverage wise. Can he cover it back in the flat? Maybe, but I don't know.
Dan thinks we should look at Troy Anderson.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. And play him as like a inside linebacker or a rusher? That's the.
I think you'd have the flexibility to do a little bit of both early on and try and figure out what suits him the best. Ideally, I think he'd be the Eric Kendricks replacement if you make that selection here. Linebacker is a decent need. Edges as well, so you could kind of do a 2-for-1 special, especially as you figure out how you want to utilize him. Safety and corner and guard are probably the 3 biggest needs here for the Vikings.
Well, I was going to say Kennard as a possibility there. That's. I'm glad you mentioned guard, just because I thought, but Abraham Lucas still on the board too. I like him better than Petty Frere.
Did he play inside though?
No.
The one position the Vikings don't need is tackle.
Is a tackle. Yeah. No, I'm just looking at who's available a little bit. Like Ed Ingram, I wouldn't take this high. I don't think. I assume the Vikings don't need to draft like their 18th tight end. Ooh, Cole Strange. Just visited the
Vikings
team
have a
too, right?
Tight end, actually. Yes, he did. The sneaky need is that Irv Smith's going to final year of his deal. He's a move tight end, not a great blocker, and there's no depth behind him. So it is a sneaky
Did they lose
need,
Conklin?
but it's not one of dire consequences.
Yes, okay. Conklin went to the Giants.
Oh, that's right. I was trying to remember. I didn't even remember that one. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I would say it's probably either. They brought in Strange. Strange is pretty good, man. I like that guy. He definitely lost some reps in Mobile, but then he'd come back the next one and kick the dude's tail, and it was impressive. He's one of those guys that, yeah, I think he's going to be overwhelmed on certain reps, but boy, he's got some smarts to him. He's got some fight. Some people say he's going to be a better fit at center. I think guard, he's going to be fine. Yeah, late third, I can get behind that pick. I mean, I personally think the Kentucky kid's a little better, but I think they're pretty close.
Is he better in a wide zone? Because that's the one concern I have with him.
Good call. Strange would be better in that, I think. You're probably right on that.
All right. Cole Strange. That wraps up the draft. So we ended up with Chris Olave, Perrion Winfrey, and Cole Strange. When you look at that, that's a pretty good haul. But with the Viking situation in the secondary, how do you feel about not taking anybody in the secondary?
I mean, not great. If I'm being honest, it didn't really, it didn't line up perfectly, and that's the nature of the draft. Like I always say, if you sit there and as a GM and worry about every need, like, well, we have these 6 needs and we have 7 picks, we better nail. It doesn't work out that way. Some years you're going to not come out of the draft with a need, right? And guess what? As we've seen this offseason, people are more open to trades. There's certainly going to be. It's not as like it used to be, but there will be some post-draft cuts, June 1 cuts, what have you. There will be contract disputes, players who want out, get traded, whatever. You can fill your needs in other ways. This is not the end of the line, as I always tell people. So take the best football players. Maybe you take a shot on a guy in round 4. I can't think of somebody off the top of my head, but I would rather have 3 great, or good to very good, maybe great players with Olave and Winfrey, that as opposed to filling a need and getting somebody who's not as good. That just seems like, the way you have to think of it.
Absolutely agree. Eric, I want to say thank you for taking your time out of your day to come on the show. And it really helped me educate the fan base on this edge class and how we can make the Vikings better. I know you have a lot of really fun stuff coming up with Yahoo. What do you have coming up for the people, and where exactly can they find you and your work?
Yeah, go over to Yahoo Sports. My Twitter handle is Eric with a C _ Edholm. And biggest thing, closest to my heart, most important thing I'm working on is carrying on the tradition of the late Therese Paylor, who made the All Juice team his baby, his project for years that he did. His last one was in 2020. We lost him last year. It was so stunning. It still is in a lot of ways. And the outpouring of of well-wishing has been so strong even now. I mean, people are still asking about him, but I mean, literally I went to teams and said, hey, we're working on the juice team. Can you maybe throw me some names? I haven't had one person say no, because they all love Therese. They love his work. So we're putting that together. I believe the 19th is when that one's coming out. So we got a little time to work, and I'll probably squeeze out a mock draft and a few more scouting reports in between now and then. But yes, the all juice team will be carried on one more year. Rest in peace, Therese. We're still thinking about you, buddy.
The all juice team is one of the best pieces of the year. I'm looking forward to it, and it's really cool that you guys are carrying that on in his honor, because he was, as you said, one of the best.
Yeah, support the Therese Paylor Foundation. His alma mater, Howard University. Sell T-shirts. If you don't have an all juice team sweatshirt or T-shirt, I've got like 7 of them. Just go buy them. They're awesome. They're comfy. They look great, and it helps a tremendous cause supporting Black journalism at Howard University in Therese's memory.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure we include it in the show notes, and I'm going to go shopping here in a little bit. Dave, we have a lot of stuff coming up this week. Welcome to the show.
Hey. Yes, we have.
Tell us what we got going on.
Tomorrow night we have In the Huddle. Jason and Miles have been working on what they plan to talk about. It's pretty interesting. You'll find out tomorrow. Wednesday we have Vikings Happy Hour. We will not be at the brewery this week. We will be in our own haciendas, and we'll be talking some good stuff. And there is a guest. I didn't look up, but I guarantee there is a guest. Should be fun. Thursday, unfortunately, unless there's some really earth-shattering news, you will not have Viking hot takes. And then, of course, back on Saturday, once again, you get myself and Darren Campbell as 2 old bloggers. We want to thank our favorite beer in Minnesota, Lake Monster, for such a great show. And Eric, I want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on, talking draft, helping educate us and the fans on some of those edge prospects. It is good to know you can never have enough, just like the corners. I always like the big guys in the front that can rush and annihilate a quarterback. It warms my heart.
Yes, sir.
Tyler, what do we say?
Well, hey, with that being said, from Dave, from Eric, and myself, have yourself a great Monday. We hope we turned a little purple, and SKOL.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite aggregator. And a special shout out goes to our partners, The Daily Norseman, where the best Vikings content can be found, and to Lake Monster Brewing, home of the best beer in Minnesota. SKOL, everybody.